What would you do if the answer to one question was going to be the determining factor in the whole future of your relationship? On today's case, Mrs. Perez says her husband has been denying their 22-month-old daughter since the day she was born, and she intends to prove to him that he is her father. Mrs. Perez says her husband's unfounded doubts have caused an unnecessary rift in their marriage, and he can either accept their daughter or face divorce. Let's hear their case.
Court is now in session. The Honorable Judge Starr presiding. Your Honor, this is the case of Perez versus Perez.
Thank you so very much. Mrs. Perez, you have come to divorce court today because you say your husband has left you with no other choice. You say he is questioning your child's paternity, and the only way to solve it is by proving he is the father and handing him divorce papers.
Yes, Your Honor.
And Ms. Perez, you admit that the future of your marriage does indeed lie in the results of the DNA test. You say the paternity of Mrs. Perez's daughter has been a huge point of contention, and you hope your marriage can be saved today.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, so before we get down to the paperwork, because that is going to be the determining factor, Mrs. Perez, tell me how we got here. Why are we in court today?
We are here because I am 100% sure that my husband is the father of our daughter, and I want to prove that to him. I am also tired of the lies, the temper tantrums, and the lack of romance in our relationship.
So, Mrs. Perez, let me just say to you, woman to woman, there's only one way a woman 100% knows who the father of their child is when they know that's the only person that they have had intimate contact with. I'm gonna ask you straight up, is that why you are 100% sure?
Yes, and I want to give him the ultimatum of either us going to marriage counseling or getting a divorce.
Yes, ma'am, absolutely. Mr. Perez, tag, you're it. Mrs. Perez said, these are my cards, I'm letting you have it.
Yes, Your Honor. I'm here because I want to confirm that she really is my daughter. It has been causing issues between me and my family, and I want to resolve that today. Until then, I don't believe in marriage counseling. I believe me and her can resolve this once it's confirmed that she's my daughter.
Well, see, the fact that we have ended up in divorce court discussing whether or not she is your daughter tells me that there are some other issues that need to be resolved, some underlying issues that would lead us to this point. Mrs. Perez, tell me a little bit about how you all met and then what led us to this point that we're in court today.
So we met in 2018 at a mutual friend's pool party. We ended up hooking up that night, so it was like love at first sight.
No, it was lust at first sight, okay?
And then after that, we lost contact. I was coming out of an abusive relationship.
Okay.
And in 2020, we reconnected. He came to my job, and I kind of saw like that was fate. Mm-hmm. And then we spent COVID, and we were like glued together.
You guys sheltered in place together?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Your Honor.
So we broke up because he was talking to this cousin.
Okay.
He was on FaceTime constantly. She would call all hours of the night. He would go to the room and talk to her privately. I asked him, why don't I see her ever at like our family gatherings? He's like, oh no, she's a friend that I see like a cousin.
Wait, one of the play cousins like we used to do back home?
Right.
This is my play cousin? Ms. Perez, why can't Mrs. Perez see her as a cousin also?
She was just a friend I knew for a very long time. She knew my family. And when it came to that time of me trying to show her, she already had a fit about who she is and grabbed my phone and gave her messages directly of what she's doing. She was being a homewrecker, etc. So I said she was a cousin to me because she really is to me for my
It was not yours.
So the lady is not a cousin?
No, ma'am.
You say you feel for her like a cousin?
Yes.
Is there any romantic relationship?
No.
His friends kind of slipped out of him, said that this was his high school sweetheart.
Oh, Mr. Perez, you left that part out. So there's a reason for her not to trust because you didn't tell her the full story.
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, me and her never really had any romantic feelings for each other.
So how do you classify a high school sweetheart?
It was more one-sided affair, like I had a crush on her.
You know, Mr. Perez, that actually makes me a little more jealous to know that this was your unrequited love. Do you realize how that would make Mrs. Perez feel? Somebody that in the back of your head is the one that got away. Just put yourself in that position.
Insecure, Your Honor.
Right, you see what I mean?
Yes.
What else has led to the tension? Because the denial of the baby is bothering me.
Right. Because of that incident, when I found out the truth, I broke up with him, and we messed around with other people.
Meaning you were going on with your life, he was going on with his life.
Well, we got back together, and then I found out I was pregnant.
Now, after you got back together, were you faithful to him?
Yes.
How soon after the two of you got back together did you become pregnant?
I found out a week after we had gotten back together.
So, Mr. Perez, you wonder what was going on with those 2 months and if, in fact, somebody else is the father of the child.
Yes, Your Honor.
Tell me a little bit about what was going on with the two of you from your perspective during that 2-month breakup.
So, Your Honor, when we were apart for those 2 months, I was currently residing in a hotel with my father. I was working majority of the nights, and I was flirting around with other girls. But I was always on and off with Jenny when it came to having sexual relationships, even when we were still apart.
So you were not on a true break, if you will. You were still connected intimately. Fair?
Yes, Your Honor, fair.
Okay.
So when she completely admitted that she wanted me back, I picked up my stuff from my father's place, and I came back to live with her, and to find out that she was pregnant. And that's when we decided to get married, because I want to make sure that even if that baby's not mine or not, I want to still be married to her. But it's still a concern that that's not my baby or not.
So, as I understand, Mrs. Perez, you actually have 2 children from a previous relationship, older children.
Yes, I do.
Okay. Mr. Perez knew about your other children. Was he a good bonus father to your children?
Yes, Your Honor.
So you were establishing a family already, Mr. Perez, am I correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And you don't have any separate children of your own?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, so, Mr. Perez, you decided to love the now Mrs. Perez throughout all of that. What made it different when it came to this new child?
Your Honor, when I look at my daughter, I'm very insecure that sometimes she is mine.
I can open the DNA results and we can resolve this.
She doesn't want to admit, but she had unprotected sex with another individual.
But this was while we were on break.
But wait, I thought y'all were still hitting it during the break.
Yes.
Yes.
I had no doubt about the child when she was pregnant that was gonna be mine. But she constantly kept on, when we get in arguments, throwing in my face that that's not my child.
So she would use your doubt as a weapon
Yes, Your Honor.
in arguments. Mrs. Perez, what do you say to that allegation?
The day that I gave birth to my daughter, we were still in the delivery room. He said he had no connection to her.
Oh, he said those words to you.
Those exact words to me.
Ms. Perez, the baby was barely clean at that point. She had just delivered the baby. What do you mean you didn't have a connection?
Your Honor, when I saw the baby come out of her and they took her to the NICU, I had no sense of joy, happiness, no anger, no sadness. I just felt disconnected completely, even from my wife at that point in time. Due to the fact probably that was my first time seeing a woman giving birth, or it's just I felt like she was not my daughter at that point in time.
But in all seriousness, Mr. Perez, it might take some time for you to establish a connection with a little person.
Yes,
But
Your Honor.
you already had a connection with Mrs. Perez's other 2 children, and you know they're not your biological children, am I right?
Yes, Your Honor.
Have you ever treated them any different?
No, Your Honor.
Do they live in the house with you all?
Yes.
And is your family dynamic where Mrs. Perez is the mother figure and you are the father figure?
Yes, Your Honor.
Do you share parenting responsibilities?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Actually, according to my files, you are really a primary caregiver.
Yes, Your Honor.
So
I'm
you've
a
taken on
stay-at-home dad.
all of that responsibility. So I know you have it in you.
Yes, Your Honor.
But as it relates to this little girl, there seems to be an impediment.
Yes, Your Honor. So every time she does remind me that she might not be my daughter, I tend to have an emotional breakdown for the simple fact that she keeps on reassuring I have doubts.
Okay, I think you're being fair. Mrs. Perez, when he says you use that in arguments and in any disagreements, that would give me doubts also. I'm gonna be honest with you.
Yes, Your Honor, I understand that. But when he told me there was no connection, that hurts me. That
Of
hurts
course.
me. That hurts me, especially after giving birth. as a
I
woman.
know, but it's been 2 years, and if you still use that as a way to hurt him.
So we did have another baby.
Oh, so you found a connection at some point? Were you in the delivery room for that?
No.
Oh, you learned your lesson. Boy, as the
Honestly,
kid...
Your Honor, I was at home taking care of her other 2 children that were at home at that point in time, and Violet was feeling sick.
The baby girl.
The baby girl.
And you stayed there, and you were dad.
Yes.
Mr. Perez, all of this, you don't have a connection. That's BS, because that's what a good man does. They take care of their children. So you're doing that naturally without ever even thinking about it. You just did it naturally.
So, Your Honor, it was when the little girl went to the NICU. I was probably traumatized by it.
I hate that the relationship of a family is going to come down to what's in this envelope. Ms. Perez, when it comes to 23-month-old Violet Nicole, it has been determined by this court, probability of paternity. If you'd like your case to be heard on divorce court, call us toll-free at 1-877-311-2222 or log on to our website at divorcecourt.com. Missed a show? Watch full episodes on our streaming platforms and follow us on social media for exclusive content.
He treats our daughter differently than our son. We have an 8-month-old son.
Explain the difference.
You know, they're kind of close in age.
Yes, you have one, 8, 9 months, and then 1, 2 years?
Almost 2 years. She's
Okay.
22 months. They kind of cry at the same time. And he will attend our son first, and then to our daughter. He spends more time with our son playing. He puts our son in his lap all the time while he's playing video games, and he doesn't do that with our daughter.
Mrs. Perez, have you and Mr. Perez had conversations about this so that you could sort of understand what it is that's blocking him from connecting fully?
Yes, with Your Honor. We've had real conversations, and what is blocking that is he doesn't know whether that's his daughter or not.
Well, when Violet wakes up and has an upset stomach, and you have to go to work, who takes care of her?
Your Honor, when I look at my daughter, I'm very insecure that sometimes she is mine because she does not look as much as me. As well, when it comes to having my baby boy on my lap, it's because he's a boy and I want him to get more comfortable with me. I want him to understand that his dad's gonna be here.
She looks like
As
him.
well, when it comes to taking kids to the hospitals, doctor appointments and everything, it's me taking them, it's not her. I do everything for my kids, even for Violet. Violet is almost 2 years old, so she can wait a little bit so I can feed Lorenzo. I feed him first, I change his diaper first, then comes my daughter.
It should be who cries first.
Well, no, Mrs. Perez, I have to tell you, I think you and Mr. Perez just have the one bone of contention that is standing between you, because you still have not adequately answered me on why you bring up to him, well, she's my daughter anyway. Why do you throw that in his face? That's important.
Again, I was really hurt by the time off that we took. I was hurt by him lying about the cousin.
Right. Are you going to be able to let that go? Because if you say you're going to forgive him, you can't throw it in his face every time you're mad. It's never going to work.
Yes, Your Honor.
Because you can't move past it. And I am not saying that you should. I'm not just telling you that you won't if you use it as a weapon when anything goes wrong in your relationship. Are there any other things that are going on in your relationship that has caused tension? Because obviously I can open the DNA results and we can resolve this, but I want to get to the core of why there is such a breakdown in communication here.
So, Your Honor, to speak on that, she doesn't want to admit, but she had unprotected sex with another individual.
But this was while we were on break.
But wait, I thought y'all were still hitting it during the break.
Yes.
Yes.
But she had a third
But we
party
were
person
also seeing other people.
Okay, well, here's the thing, Mrs. Perez. Everybody has to take responsibility for their behavior. The only way a woman knows for 100% certain is if she was not having sex with anybody else. So then, as the case goes on, I have now learned that there's a possibility of someone else, and you have at some point said to Mr. Perez that that intimate contact was unprotected. Now, is that accurate?
Yes, Your Honor.
So you don't 100% know until we actually look at DNA results.
I 100% know that the timing was him.
Okay. Is there, again, anything else that's at the base of this breakdown in communication? Mr. Perez?
So me and her have not have sexual contact anymore like that. Ever since we had Lorenzo and we keep on arguing.
So
It
the
been
baby
con-
is 8 months old, about to be 9 months old. You all have not had any intimate contact?
Very rare.
Very few. And that's one of the lack of romance that I'm talking about.
You know, the sad part about Miss Perez, it's not the lack of romance, it's the lack of trust. Now, in order to rebuild that trust, you have to have a willingness to work on the relationship. And no matter what these test results say, I need to know that the two of you at least are going to be there for the children that you have started to put a family together for.
Honor,
Do you
I
have
will
that
be-
in you, Mr. Perez?
Yes, Your Honor.
Robert, will you please retrieve the DNA results? Okay, I hate that the relationship of a family is going to come down to what's in this envelope. I get the sense that so much has passed in between you that it really does. Ms. Perez,
Yes, Your Honor.
when it comes to 23-month-old Violet Nicole, it has been determined by this court you are not the father.
Oh.
Probability of paternity, 0%.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Oh, my heart breaks for the two of you and for this family. It takes a lot to build a family, Mr. Perez. And what you have put in thus far, in my opinion, is beautiful soil that you have just been planting into.
I'm sorry.
So, Your Honor, I do plan to keep on taking care of her. To me, she's my daughter.
She will be your daughter always.
I want this not to affect my relationship with her. I just want it to build it stronger. I love her. I love the little girl. I love my son. But I will be there for her because I want those 4 children to know that they have a dad in me. I do want a divorce, but I will still be there for my kids.
So now what we are establishing is how to put a co-parenting situation together.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mrs. Perez, there are some partners who can establish a bond. I was lucky enough. My mother married the most amazing man, and he became my dad for over 40 years. There is no human being on this earth that I love more than my dad. One day, Violet's gonna wanna feel that way. You are always going to be her first love, and you owe it to her to stand in that space for her. What's going to happen between the two of you is really a matter of maturity and time. But for Lorenzo and Violet and your 2 older children, it's absolutely imperative that you put them first.
I'm sorry, niggas. And I do love you.
Ms. Perez, I'd like to offer you all the opportunity to help someone help you through this process, because this is pretty intense. To rebuild trust, to even be able to be friends again, is going to take some time. If you're interested in that, I'd like to help you for this transition.
Sure, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
I wish I could give you more, but the one thing I can give you is the space to heal, and you're going to need that space. As I always say, there's only one way to be 100% sure.
You've heard of women's intuition? Man's intuition from the get.
And although he was performing all the fatherly duties, that biological connection just simply was not there. That breaks my heart. And what's wrong with people not using condoms if they're doing on-break kind of shenanigans?
Absolutely. I don't get it either.
They need to start going to the drugstore. Quick, fast, and in a hurry.
made in Georgia.